So you mentioned the five forces. Can you briefly share what those five forces are with the audience and
Sure,
myself?
everybody's heard of the five forces. And what's interesting is because the term five forces sounds so great, people aren't sure what actually goes into it. So instead of calling it five forces, I'm going to say, let's just say, who are the five major categories of player in any industry? So if we're talking about the potato chips that we just discussed, first thing you want to think of, who are the competitors? Who makes potato chips, right? And then you say, who are the buyers? Who eats it? So far we have two of the forces. Now, for the other forces, and actually that would actually be a supply and demand curve. So for those people that like economics, the reason why Porter works all the time, it really comes straight from supply and demand curves. So with the competitors and the buyers, you have your supply and demand curve. Now, if you remember the economics course, for those people who took it, you can move your supply chain with new potential competitors coming in. So it's a theory, but it moves the whole supply chain. If someone says, hey, I'm a potato farmer, I want to make some potato chips, all of a sudden there's going to be more supply. And then you have the concept of what about a substitute? I want to eat pretzels that will lower demand. So it's still a supply and demand curves, but those are four of the forces. Okay, you got the buyers who are eating it and demanding it. You got the competitors and potential competitors that might come three, and then the substitutes would be the fourth. And if you remember the supply and demand curve, the point of equilibrium, that's where you know the revenue to the industry. And the fifth force are the vendors because you have to pay expenses. So now I understand what industry profitability are. And if you just took today, you got Lay's potato chips. So they're trying to sell it to you. So those are the two forces. Somebody might come in to be another supplier. Third, if all of a sudden you want to switch from potato chips to, you know, popcorn, all of a sudden that's going to lower demand. And then you have your expenses. Ooh, I need potatoes, salt, and oil. I probably need a potato slicing machine. I need a factory to build it. Those are the five forces. And it sounds complicated, but it really is just simple common sense of who plays and who wants to get your money.
Welcome to A State of Readiness, a podcast set as a fireside chat with business leaders to discuss what it takes for a company to be in a state of readiness and become a high-performance organization, with your host, Joseph Paris.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of State of Readiness. I'm your host, Joseph Paris. Today, my special guest is Alan Michaels, founder of Industry Knowledge Graph, a strategic planning tool built on Michael Porter's competitive strategy framework. I have known Alan for many years, having first met at a Southern Tier Opportunity Coalition meeting here in Binghamton, New York. And I'm sure you're going to find his journey and tenacity as fascinating as I did. Give a listen.
Welcome, Alan, and welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on board.
Nice to see you, and it's great to be here, Joe.
Yeah, now we've known each other, I would guess 20 years. I think that we probably first met each other at the Southern Tier, whatever it was, STOC.
Sounds right. Some kind of conference. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we've been running in the same circles when I'm in Binghamton. I've, as you know, I've not been there or located there for quite some time, but, we've known each other, and you've been working on this project for quite some time. So, you're a big fan of Michael Porter, and why don't we, spend a little bit of time about Michael Porter and how he's influenced your train of thought and how you've used his theories to create this offering that you've are about ready to or have recently released.
Sure. So it was 1986 thereabouts, and I was at Manufacturers Hanover Bank. I was an IT manager having the time of my life. And all of a sudden, the CIO of the bank decided to assign me to what they called a special project. And on that special project, I was working with two high paid consultants, and it was to come up with the strategy of Manufacturers Hanover Bank. And they said, have you heard of Michael Porter? And I said, no. And they gave me a book called Competitive Advantage. And I started reading that book. And before I finished chapter 3, I said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So that's how I learned about Michael Porter. He's written many books, but to me, by far, Competitive Advantage is the best book. And I started using it in 1986 and have been using it ever since. My last job, I was a corporate planner of a $7 billion insurance company. But 23 years ago, when the company was sold, I decided to take maybe not a golden, but a silver parachute. And 23 years later, the project I thought would take about 5 to 7 years, basically to define the global economy. It's now year 23, and we launched last week.
Congratulations. For those, just for posterity purposes, last week would have been the beginning of April 2024. You never know what kind of tail we have on this podcast. But I got to ask a question here. You said after 3 chapters you were hooked. What was the hook? What would you get hooked on?
What did I get hooked on? Well, I had an MBA and a master's in computers, but for 10 years I was mostly using my computer background in an IT development group. And I guess the best way maybe to explain it is some people are great cooks. They can take anything that's around the refrigerator, they smell and taste and put it together. I'm not one of those type people. And then there are other people that, you get used to some recipes that you like and you do it the exact same way all the time. Well, Michael Porter's book, Competitive Advantage, really shows from step 1 to, let's say, step 100, exactly how you should do corporate planning, corporate strategy in an organization, any industry of any size. And to me, it was just not only every paragraph, almost every sentence you write is full of meat. And so that's what I liked. It was practical. I could implement it. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
So you did that at Manufacturers Hanover, and at the next, what was the next company that you worked at?
Well, is it Manufacturers Hanover? Yes, we did it for 31 lines of business.
Mm-hmm.
After that, where did I go? I became the corporate planner of the home insurance company, which I don't think exists anymore. I was there 6 months, and that company was sold. Then I became a consultant, so I did it for a couple of companies as a consultant, and then I went to IBM for 5 years, and then after that, the corporate planner at One Beacon Insurance. That's my history.
Now, were you also a corporate planner at IBM?
No, I was a strange title is product manager of product management. I'm not even sure of my title. I don't remember, but I did have the opportunity. I was there 5 years, and 1 year I had the opportunity to look at all of the lines of business that IBM was. In fact, I remember at that time it was 323,000 people, because one of the things you want to do is you want to be able to align all of the people by industry or line of business, if you would.
Mm-hmm. So that's what brought you to Endicott or the greater Binghamton area.
No, actually, when I took that silver parachute from my insurance company 23 years ago, we were living in Boston. We basically lived in Manhattan for decades. So my wife said, let's go back to the New York area. It turned out we went to Greenwich, which is about 30 miles outside of Manhattan. And so this project, again, that I thought would take around 5 years to do. As the money, Greenwich is an expensive place. So then we moved to another place, Stamford, Connecticut. And then after another couple of years, as that silver parachute kind of dwindled, Binghamton was, my wife read an article in the New York Times saying Binghamton was the cheapest place in the tri-state area. So that's why I'm in Binghamton, New York.
Now that's pretty funny and also a little sad maybe, but that's hysterical because at the time, IBM had a big footprint. There was IBM Owego, Federal Systems Division. There was IBM Glendale. There was IBM Endicott. Sprawling, probably 20,000 employees or so. And then, of course, I think that there's none now. I think that IBM didn't renew its lease for this year, so they're no longer a presence. But you decided that you're going to, put your stake in the ground there in the greater Binghamton area, and you continued developing this product or this offering, the solution. So let's talk about let's talk about the very beginning of that process. Did you just wake up one day and say, yes, I'm going to create a solution? How did that come about?
I guess most of it is that I consider myself Michael Porter's #1 fan worldwide ever. I do know I've done more industry analysis using his 5 forces than anyone else. But I guess you can say that during that time, I always noticed, even when I was a corporate planner, if I wanted to get a consulting company, whether it was McKinsey or anyone local, they really didn't do industry analysis correctly. So this is hard to say. In my view, 99% of people who believe they understand Michael Porter don't use it correctly. And that's for one word, granularity. So when you and I say, what is an industry? Or if I asked 100 people what an industry is, before I ask that question, everybody is so familiar with the word industry, they know what it means. They wouldn't question it. Now, all of a sudden, I'm betting all the listeners are saying, do I know what an industry is? Could they define it? And you get so used to different definitions of industry that some people will talk about, if you would, the financial services industry. It makes sense. On the other hand, within the financial services industry is the banking industry. Within the banking industry might be the wholesale banking industry. Within the wholesale banking industry might be the payment systems industry. Within that might be something like wholesale funds transfer services. Now, industry. Now, at that point, you're at a granular level, and that was actually one of the first industries I ever analyzed while at Manufacturers Hanover Bank. But just to give you an idea of that granularity, like potato chips would be called an industry in Michael Porter's definition. So because we couldn't find consultants that actually did that work, which I find shocking, when I left, I said, nobody's really ever analyzed the global economy by industry the way Porter uses the word industry. And he came out with, won all the awards in 1979 to 1986 is when he was winning all the awards for his 2 books. So most people, I guess, in the United States use NAICS codes, which used to be SIC codes. I mean, in an industry in NAICS codes, it would put, let's say, a commercial jet, a business jet, a fighter jet, and even a blimp in the same industry, which I would say, in common sense, would say that's ridiculous. So knowing that, the idea was to say, why doesn't somebody do it? And I'll tell you, I had a lot of fear and trepidation before I started this. And what if the United States government came out and updated their, if you would, NAICS codes instead using Michael Porter? Now, now I see it's not even close. They wouldn't even think about it, which is ridiculous. But that was the origin, and I thought it would take, because of my background at IBM and in banking and insurance, I said I probably have about a quarter of the global economy. 5 years later, we'll have it done. As I said, 23 years. Last week, it's out.
Right. So you mentioned the 5 forces. Can you briefly share what those 5 forces are with the audience and myself?
Sure, everybody's heard of the 5 forces. And what's interesting is because the term 5 forces sounds so great, people aren't sure what actually goes into it. So instead of calling it 5 forces, I'm going to say, let's just say, who are the 5 major categories of player in any industry? So if we're talking about the potato chips that we just discussed, first thing you want to think of, who are the competitors? Who makes potato chips, right? And then you say, who are the buyers? Who eats it? So far we have 2 of the forces. Now, for the other forces, and actually that would actually be a supply and demand curve. So for those people that like economics, the reason why Porter works all the time, it really comes straight from supply and demand curves. So with the competitors and the buyers, you have your supply and demand curve. Now, if you remember the economics course, for those people who took it, you can move your supply chain with new potential competitors coming in. So it's a theory, but it moves the whole supply chain. If someone says, hey, I'm a potato farmer, I want to make some potato chips, all of a sudden there's going to be more supply. And then you have the concept of, what about a substitute? I want to eat pretzels. That will lower demand. So it's still a supply and demand curves, but those are 4 of the forces. Okay, you got the buyers who are eating it and demanding it. You got the competitors and potential competitors that might come 3, and then the substitutes would be the 4th. And if you remember the supply and demand curve, the point of equilibrium, that's where the revenue to the industry. And the fifth force are the vendors, because you have to pay expenses. So now I understand what industry profitability are. And if you just took today, you know, you got Lay's potato chips, so they're trying to sell it to you. So those are the two forces. Somebody might come in to be another supplier. Third, if all of a sudden you want to switch from potato chips to, you know, popcorn, all of a sudden that's going to lower demand. And then you have your expenses. Oh, I need potatoes, salt, and oil. I probably need a potato slicing machine. I need a factory to build it. Those are the five forces. And it sounds complicated, but it really is just simple common sense of who plays and who wants to get your money.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, that was quite illuminating, quite succinct, you know, and I followed it completely. So in my opinion, you did pretty darn well. So 23 years ago, you had this notion of a dream that you wanted to create this approach, this discipline, this solution. So why don't you share what that's all about? You know, we got the start, you know, Michael Porter and granular industries, but you also said something about like the global economics. And now I got to tell you, there's a lot of companies in the global economics, and they're changing every day. So I'm wondering, you know, how did you? Maybe that's why it took 23 years, right? You know, how did you come to this point where you've captured the global economy?
Sure. And I'm not actually sure if I should say 23 years or I should say 1986. Just either answer, you could say they're just different sides. But giving this story to you in this podcast, given that we did go through my history in 1986. So my first 31 in the database, if you would be at Manufacturers Hanover Bank. Then I became, again, the corporate planner of the home insurance company. So I had insurance industries. Then I was a consultant, and I used to rent out the Marriott Hotel in New York about every 3 months and have marketing people and planning people come in. And so I would learn their industries, what they were on. Then again, at IBM, I got to see all of IT or a lot of IT, and then an insurance company. So when I started 23 years ago, that's why I say I probably had, I don't know, maybe 2,000 industries already. And I said, how long would it take to do the rest of the global economy? And I didn't know, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how hard would it be, how many industries there would be. And so with that, I forgot your question, Joe. What was your question?
Well, you know, you started off with the 2000. You figured it was going to take 5 years.
Right.
Okay, it took a lot longer. And my question was, you know, the global economy is gigantic. All right, and there's like near infinite number of products and a near infinite number of companies that are in the ecosystems of those products, either the vendor's vendor, the customer's customer, and so on and so forth. Of course, you know, countries involved and et cetera. How did you capture all of that, capture and categorize and quantify all of that activity globally?
23 years of love, of passion, of research. And your infinite number, I would say, is 24,117 as of today. And I would say it easily captures 98 to 99% of global GDP. And in our mindset, it's always we have the entire global economy. But if somebody says you're missing industry XYZ, 3 minutes later, we add industry XYZ. So we don't know of anything we don't have. We just know that when you sum up the global economy and GDP and what we have, it's two slightly different measures, but we've got the global economy covered.
Okay, so when you add an industry,
right?
It's got to be more than just a meta tag, right? It's just got to be more than a code. There's got to be some way of quantifying what that industry is and how that industry differentiates from all the other industries to be its own unique industry. I'm almost thinking about, you know, genetics and the animal tree, you know, all the different apes that might exist and all the different horses that might exist, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So, you know, if we've identified a new species, if you will, how do we know it's a new species, and how, what other, bits of pieces of information do you gather and associate with that species to identify it as a species?
Great question. And that's basically the joy out of what it is that I've been doing for 23 years. It's saying, what is an industry? And I'm the decider, if you would. I mean, it's my project that I've had since 1986. And so that's what I do. Now, the questions you'll ask that we went through potato chips are the exact same questions.
Mm-hmm.
So who are the competitors would be one of the five forces. What are the substitutes? One of the five forces. Who are the buyers? One of the five forces. And actually, when you think of buyers, you really need to think of it in two parts. Who are the channels? And then who are the end buyers? So there's a lot of information from the five forces that you ask about any one of the industries. And then there's more information from my corporate planning days. I say, these people want this information and that. In Excel, it takes 1,400 columns for me to decide what information goes in a new industry when you tell me of a new industry. And it actually doesn't take more than an hour or so. It's not really automated, but the process is so, let's say, if you go through Competitive Advantage enough times and read his book, and you say, this is all the information you need on an industry, like he has something called the value chain, which a lot of people aren't sure what it means, but it's what activities does one business need to do? So if you're making potato chips, you need to buy the potatoes, you need to buy the salt, buy the oil, slice the potatoes, whatever activities you need to be in that industry. And whether it's a business jet, it's a piece of software, whatever, you're asking the same questions. And that's what competitive advantage is. And that's why I liked it so much. Again, remember, I don't know how to cook that well when you just have things, but I can follow a recipe. I know Porter tells you the exact right 100 questions in the right order. Okay, so.
All right, so now you've invented this labor of love.
Right.
You've given birth. It's a week old. Okay.
Right.
What's it used for?
Okay, this is so basic and so fundamental. It will have so many different people throughout the company who wants to use it, but it's the same basic information. Now, the labor of love for me was as a corporate planner. So if I'm a corporate planner and I want to say, no matter what size company I'm in, the first thing they'll tell you in corporate planning is to say, oh, what's your vision? And your vision should drive, well, which industry should I compete in? Boom. That's an important question. Which industries should I be in? Again, we're using that word industries. So here, the answer is it's one of the 24,117 industries. Or you're creating a new industry, which we say, go ahead. People want to start planning now to do agriculture on the moon. I say fine. As soon as somebody has it, or a flying car, it doesn't matter what it is, boom, we add it. So to me, this is 100% any corporate planner who wants to use it. Now, in this 23 years, we had to make some money. We did find out, you know what? There's only really one corporate planner in most large companies and that kind of stuff, or a small group, and there are many more marketing people. So Parker Hannifin happened to be our largest client that we had for about 6 or 7 years, and we did about 35 projects for them. Never about Parker Hannifin, the company itself. They always wanted to know about their potential customers. So they'd want to know about, let's say, hospital equipment. Think of all the hospital equipment that's more than, it's a big physical thing, so they can put their parts in it. Or they'd want to know about oil and gas equipment or agricultural equipment. So anybody who wants to know, I guess you can call it the B2B world, who says, what does that company do? Whether it's General Motors or anything else, we will tell you in a very granular way exactly what it is they do with the industry analysis done for each. So if you want to say, what does a company do? We say it's in N number of industries, whether that number is 3 or 50 or 500. And for each industry, give a standard Michael Porter 101 industry analysis. I got one more for you, even though I'm going long. I'm going to just say, when you think about, at our age, you can go back to the Coke Pepsi challenge.
Yeah.
When they had the Coke Pepsi challenge, Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola were in one industry, the soda industry, the carbonated soda industry. Okay. When Coca-Cola came out with Diet Coke, that was a second industry. that changed a whole lot of things. Now, if you compared on our system, Coca-Cola versus PepsiCo today, first thing I would say is before this meeting, you said what industry they're in, or many people today on Wall Street will say, what industry is Coca-Cola and Pepsi in? Maybe they'll say the beverage industry. If they're sophisticated, they'll say PepsiCo is in the beverage and the food industry, right? We have Coca-Cola is in 56 industries, nice number, and PepsiCo is in 156 industries. So it's no longer one-to-one. And when you look at the long list that PepsiCo is in, you'll see, wow, there are more food industries than there are beverage industries, which is pretty interesting. So the one word that kind of summarizes the difference between this system and any other system that we know of is granularity.
Okay, so with your system, what I'm envisioning here is that you could work top down. In other words, Pepsi and what industries they're in,
Right?
or alternatively, what industries exist and who's playing in them.
Exactly. Who
Okay.
your competitors are by granular industry. So if
Okay.
you ever want to compare two companies or mergers and acquisitions, boom.
So if I'm a PE firm, private equity firm,
Right?
and I wanted to add strategically to my portfolio company so that they, could cross feed one another,
Yeah.
I'm going to look at, your solutions and identify potential targets that I could acquire that are in that niche that will complement the rest of my portfolio. Did I just say something smart?
You said something very smart, Joe. And that's right. This is so basic with so many different needs. And it really answers two simple questions. The first one, it's like the Monopoly board. Here are the 24,117 industries. So it kind of makes it easy. You want to focus in on chemicals manufacturing? Fine. Food? Fine. Whatever it is you want, go ahead. You want to compare two companies? Fine. So if you look at the global economy, versus where you're at, you get to look at, oh, look at all the things I'm not in. So you might discover, do I want to enter them or not? Or if you want to compare yourself with somebody else, you say, look what they do versus not. So Burn Dairy, from your upstate New York day, is a great ice cream. I mean, right? So you can take another ice cream place like Turkey Hill we have in our demo, and you compare. Okay, they both have ice cream sandwiches. They both have the tub ice cream. One has ice cream cakes, and the other one doesn't. Now, these are each industries. Now, I agree. Some people are at a level where they just want to know what's in ice cream. But I'm in the world where, Tom Carvel invented the soft ice cream that most people know. But most people don't know that he was about to go broke even without that. It wasn't until he invented the ice cream cake as well, which is a different industry. It changed ice cream from being just a summer concept. Because ice cream cakes are sold in supermarkets, it became an all year round food that you would have, and you would think of birthdays and events like that. So each of these industries has a story. And I'm reminded of something you said earlier in this podcast, and that was when you said all things changing. It's true. So many new industries come. You got the whole, AI world, knowledge graph world, right? But when we were growing up, we probably both ate Cheerios, which are still around. Oreos are more than 100 years. Chiquita bananas. There are so many things that have been around for 100 years, 75 years, and all this. To me, it's interesting when you think about it. Why hasn't there ever been a monopoly board of what are the industries that are out there at this granular level? To me, in some ways, it's shocking. I never understood why it hasn't happened. I mean, you can go and get people who categorized wines greatly, and then I can go to there are people who categorize cars greatly, and you can have pockets, thousands of companies that have great, very focused little databases. But if I just want to look at the global economy, now we say today it's 24,117 for your posterity. Let's just say they're around 25,000. And that's a nice number to know. And once you get our head around it, and the approximate $107 billion of the global economy, kind of stuff, it's just, it gives focus.
So I understand the industries, and a new industry comes along, you're able to capture it, and you're able to add to the 24,000. But what about all the companies, all the little niche players? Okay, there's a lot of companies that do a lot of things, of course, but there's also a lot of companies that do one thing. And how do you identify all of those companies. I'm thinking about that private equity scenario that I was sharing
Right.
with you. It's like I want to get into a company that makes something that's a commodity. Maybe it's nuts and bolts. Okay, there's millions of people that might make nuts and bolts. Um, if I'm a new player on the block, I'm going to set up my little shingle there. I'm going to start making nuts and bolts. How are you able to become aware of them and put them in the proper category, or
Great
don't?
question.
Yeah.
Great question also. And I would say this gives me an opportunity to say what this is and isn't. Okay. Okay. The name of the company is Industry Knowledge Graph LLC, where the word industry starts. Okay. And it's an industry knowledge graph. So we're putting the word industry first. So our first focus is the industries. That's why we care
Okay.
about the 24,117. And if something else comes up, we'll add it. We want to know about all the industries. So that's our, if you would, number one priority. The second priority is for each one of those industries. Now, as of now, the limitation is 100 brand offerings or competitors per industry.
Okay.
So as soon as I say that, I would say, well, if we're talking about mainframe computers, well, there are only a handful, so that's not a problem. If you're talking about something like making, I don't know, a home loan, there are so many banks around the country. We're not trying to do the tens of thousands of banks. We'll take the top 100. So if you want to know
Okay.
about home loans, that industry analysis will work for anyone. Or if you're talking about commercial automobile insurance, we'll only have room for the top 100, in the market share, the top 100. So I don't want to give the impression that we're trying to get millions and millions of companies.
Okay. Okay.
A sad stat that most people don't like to hear is if you take the top 2,000 organizations, they account for 50% of global GDP. Just 2,000. So, and I would say our total number we have is approaching 14,000 of organizations we have. So that's why we can get to the 98, 99% of GDP and miss, some little company that came up. In fact, you would say we want the industry leaders of the 24,000. They're mostly the biggest companies in the world, but not always. The one exception is coming from Binghamton, as you know, for upstate New York, we put in about 1,000 any size companies. We didn't care what size it was. That way we got the little karate places and all that kind of stuff. So we wanted the industry taxonomy to be complete. So we used upstate New York as an example where it didn't have to be big and you were added.
That's it. That's amazing. So you mentioned across the nation. Now, you capture or quantify companies that are outside of the United States too in your model, correct?
Yeah, I don't remember when I said the word nation. If I said it,
Yeah,
maybe you'll edit it. Maybe
when we
you'll
were
edit
talking
in the
about
tape.
you were just talking about loans and the 100 biggest banks in the nation. So when you said the
I
nation,
meant I should have said globally. Edit that out
okay.
if you can. But
No,
otherwise, this has
this
been
is even
global.
better.
This has been global from day one.
Okay,
Okay. Now
excellent.
I would say this. When I started 23 years ago, for the first 3 or 4 years, there were a couple of countries like Brazil. I remember when you couldn't read the annual reports of different companies, but in the last 15 years, been no problem. So it's purely global.
Okay, okay. Now, how do you get? What's the cutoff or the theoretical cutoff for the being 100 in an industry? Well, there's
There's no
101.
say that once again. What
So,
is the cutoff?
say there's 101 providers in an
Yeah.
industry.
Okay.
How do you just take the top 100? Where's the cutoff point, or what do you use to measure the top 100? Is that you're aware of them, or is it revenue, or is it profit, or?
Well, theoretically, it's meant to be the top 100 based upon revenue for that product offering per industry, that type of
Okay,
stuff. In reality, we'll just look at who are the largest, put them in. Sometimes it's guessing. We might put someone who's on number 189. We don't realize. I don't want to get to assume
fine.
that we're
Okay,
with that with that precise. It's
okay,
really what I'd like to project this is it's really basic industry 101. Who are the top competitors for each of these things? What are the stops for each of the 24,000? It's really just basic 101 stuff is the best way to look at. But when you do basic simple 101 stuff for the 24,000, you not only can look at one industry, That's microeconomics, one industry, potato chips. But then you can take any buyer type or any trend or anything you can think of and say, how does this thing, any concept you want, you go across the 24,000 and say, how are they impacted? Like 5 years ago, I had a big project on 5G. What is that going to mean? And you would go down, okay, what does it mean for the 24,000? You just quickly score them so that you know that, okay, if you're in telemedicine and those type of things, that's going to be great. If you're a paper newspaper, that's not good. But it gives you the concept to say, I want to look at all industries that, impact, let's say, wealthy men. You go down, and because this is so granular, I mean, premium vodka is a different industry than some discount vodka. So that's what it gives you, the ability at the granular level to be much more precise than people are today.
Okay, so let's keep on the beverage theme for a moment. Whether it's colas, fruit juices, vodka, whatever it is. Say I'm a company that makes filters for the beverage industry.
Right.
Now, I would be able to take a look at the beverage industry across at the macro level and who all the players are and identify who I might be able to sell my filter systems to.
Absolutely. And different beverages might require different filters. Who knows?
Right. All right. So you just launched a week ago, right? After this long journey.
Right.
How did that come about? Now, I know that you have a partner and everything else. To the extent that you can talk about it, I wouldn't ever ask you to, share anything that, of course, that is confidential. But you've launched. What did you launch, and how did that all come about?
Sure. Well, the launch means that we are now able to take a credit card for somebody to come on and to go ahead and to use the system. I don't want to make it like it's launched and that's it. It's like every couple of weeks. Uh, Going back to the first part of your question, yes. So the company that I've had, Industry Building Blocks, is what all the data is about. And another company, a fantastic company called Semantic Arts, is in the knowledge graph world and in the semantic world, ontology, which is another revolution. So Dave McComb, the president of Semantic Arts, in my eyes, he is like what Porter is to strategy, where nobody in my mind comes close to Porter. Okay, there's a lot of people come and go with the Porter is so foundational. Well, on the other side, Dave McComb is leading the data-centric revolution, which is almost coming mainstream, I would say, this year because of all the AI stuff. All these knowledge graphs will be used to control AI a bit. So his revolution, and that's a whole nother story on what data-centric is in the knowledge graph. We're putting two revolutions together. So what I want to do, revolution might not be the right word for what I want to do. I want to make Porter fast, quick, and you don't even have to understand Porter to go ahead to use it. It's like anyone going down a grocery store. You know whether or not you want to buy some cheese, right? But there's a difference between Roquefort cheese and Swiss cheese, right? I mean, it's obvious to you when you shop. So to me, the database should have it. But if you go to NAICS codes, they're going to have just cheese, you know? So where were we going to? Where were we leading?
The launch and the partnership and
Oh,
how that all came. How did you find this company, or how did they find you? And again, only to the extent that you could share.
Sure.
And how did you come to partner and you launch? What did you launch?
Sure. So how do we come about to discover them? So about 5 years ago, I had a company. So for this 23 years, still had to make some money. So I'd have different clients coming in, so from different areas on what they wanted. And so this company said they were interested in our taxonomy. And it was something we've been working on for so long, wouldn't have sold it for many millions of dollars. And so I kind of said no, but it turned out after about 6 months conversations, they didn't want it at the industry level. Okay, they wanted it one level higher. So to them, they weren't interested the way I think you should be interested, that a chocolate chip cookie is a different industry than a peanut butter cookie. Of course. One uses chocolate, one uses peanut butter. A lot of people get allergic to one. There are great stories about how chocolate chip companies come in. There are even TV shows about the chocolate chip industry, so they were different. So after 6 months, I said, okay, I'll give they said, we'll give you, and the amount of money was pretty significant. And it turned out that that big bundle of money was coming in December. And knowing you know that New York State, they were going to take half of the damn, so I had about a week. And so Dave McComb, I mean, I heard about him and that type of thing for a while. He's like the thought leader and all this kind of stuff. I basically took a week and I begged him. I called him multiple times. I begged him to take me on. We didn't have time for, I said, I don't care about contract. I don't care about anything, Dave. I want to send you my money. So I don't know if I can put this on a recording. I didn't want to give it to New York State. And so it just take me on. We'll figure something out. And that was the best decision in business I've ever made. He's such a gentleman, such a smart guy, and all that kind of stuff. Plus, Semantic Arts basically built it. So I was like a vendor. And then I would say we were 1 year into it and different things happened. We said, well, let's create a new company. So that new company is called Industry Knowledge Graph LLC. We have an industry knowledge graph, which we shortened to industrykg.com. I don't know if I said that clearly enough, but I want people to hear industrykg.com, which has a nice demo and they can test this out. And so that's how the company was formed. That's how we started. And the launch was basically, there's so many things we're going to be adding to this. We called it the official launch once we had the credit card concept to say, oh, you can put it in and take it.
Right. So, my experience is, especially with solutions like this, there's never a version done. So, you're going to be adding features to mine the data set and query the data set that you've created. I'm sure you're going to be adding, probably ancillary or supplemental products and offerings to it that may exist. But you've launched it a week ago, so people can actually go and with swipe their credit card, or that's kind of dating me, isn't it? They could just log in, share their credit card information, and access the system, and it's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that.
Okay, other than podcasts like this, how are you getting the word out?
How am I getting the word out? Well, this is the third podcast. I have 20 LinkedIn groups. So one's got not as big as yours, but it's got around 45,000 people. Corporate strategy, what is it? It's corporate planning, strategy, and strategic market segmentation, something like that. And so that's got 45,000 members in it. 20 others by industry. So we have all these industry groups. So the chemical manufacturing has like 7,000 members in it. So each industry sector, we want to then give an example of how to use our system for their industry sector. We pretty much think that over the next month or two, word will get around on its own, word of mouth, nothing more granular than that.
Well, I think that's really brilliant, because I know a lot of companies that just start throwing money at marketing, and much of it goes to waste. And I think that it's wise for you to just let it go word of mouth, and then find out who's hearing it. What are the demographics of the person that's hearing it and responding to it, and then be able to develop a targeted marketing program that reaches those specific types of people.
Well, I'd like to hear you say it. I'd like to think that we gave a lot of thought to it. The truth is, we have all the resources we need for industry research, for semantic development, for knowledge graph development. But I would admit, sales and marketing, we don't have much on it with. In fact, I think it's about a month from now, we're going to say, okay, how would we introduce people who want to, sell for us, be a channel for us? Again, there's so many markets for this. This tool, I think, is so powerful. You can be a one-person consultant with this tool, and in my mind, you can beat McKinsey for phase 1, 2, and 3 of a project. After that, we can't. But let's say it's just to say, I just want the basics. If you want the basics, and anyone who's read Competitive Advantage by Michael Porter, this is like 99% on his coattails and his intellectual capital. You can almost look at the table of contents of Competitive Advantage and see what information we have. Or just look at the demo and it'll show you the exact information we have.
Right. Super. So, we're coming up on time. Any parting words of wisdom? Anything else that you would like to share?
Well, sure. You said future things we're going to be doing. So
Yeah.
right now, it's 100% IBB data is in the industry knowledge graph. Obviously, over the next year or so, we're going to say, there's a lot of free government information out there. So Porter did all this work with US clusters and all that, and you've got NAICS codes. So in our system, you can see I'm not a fan of NAICS codes. In fact, one of the reasons we started this is because I couldn't deal with NAICS codes and that type of thing. But it's also got it's got what New Zealand and Australia. We have their codes. We have the UN's codes. So we have about 10 different industry classification codes if people want to switch between them and that type of stuff. But let's say you have let's say you're out there and you have industry or company data. We want to add those people to our knowledge graph. In other words, I'd like to view what we have is just strategic planning 101, the skeleton. If you happen to have a database on wines, let's figure out a way that that can be added. We're not even trying, because we don't think we have any competitors that do this. We want all people, companies, whether they're company and industry vendors or they're companies that just have data, let find a way to put it into our knowledge graph. That's the power of the knowledge graph. Again, that's a conversation for another time. What does it mean to be data centric and have a knowledge graph? But this gets rid of all the silos. I know you're really big on getting rid of silos in companies. That's what the data centric world is. You define things, you define them once well. It's not the application centric 60-year mess that they have trying to figure out how to put systems together. So we'll be adding, we want lots of people to come to this party to put their information. So it's a one-stop shop if you want information.
That sounds, I'm really happy that you've made it this far. I know I've known you forever, and I know that you've been talking about it and you've been working on it and toiling it. And I was always wondering, when the hell's it going to get out? He's working on this thing forever, and I'm really, really pleased to hear that you've actually brought it to market, that people could actually acquire it, leverage into the wisdom that's been captured and the structure that you've designed. And I'm very happy that you've met this technology partner that help put it all together, client facing. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. So congratulations.
Thanks very much. It's been an enjoyable 23 years. It might have been 15 years longer than I thought, but it's a fun project, and it will save people so much time. I guess a parting thought would be when Manufacturers Hanover was looking which bank to merge with, I did the analysis of the top 10 banks that we would merge with by line of business. It took about 9 months to do. I can now do it in 9 seconds. What took 9 months to do can now be done in 9 seconds. That's not to say we have all the information we want. A lot of this is just in time.
Yeah.
So of the 24,000, we'll have a lot more information, let's say on 10 or 12,000 than the others. But
Right.
if we haven't done it, we want to put more meat on the bones to every industry and every company we have. So if we don't have it, we just add it, and it's quick.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Alan. I'm sure that everybody, and of course, I'll at the end of the roll and at the beginning of the roll, I'll put in the contact information, the website information, and everything else. So I just want to thank you for your time. It's been a really great pleasure, and congratulations once again.
It's industrykg.com, and Joe, I thank you.
Thank you for listening to State of Readiness. You can discover more episodes and learn about the book written by Joseph Paris of the same title at www.state-of-readiness.com. You can learn more about Joseph Paris at www.josephparis.me/card.
So one thing that I thought of saying a couple of days ago, but didn't say during this meeting is, Joe, how come you haven't used the demo?
I haven't, because I just haven't had a chance. I wanted to actually to be able to walk through it with you.
Yeah, anytime. We could be now, you're probably too tired, but anytime I'll be happy to.
Can you fire it up right now? I'll let you share.
Sure. So there you go. Look at that. I remembered correctly. 24,171. And that will keep going up. My guess is
To
3 years.
infinity and beyond.
No. Around 25,000, you
Okay.
know, and then, and then people actually have to discover a new industry to do it, you know? So what you're looking at are 19, we call them industry super sectors. Now you can go down this just like other hierarchies, but the best way to think about this is these are all distinct. They can be grouped any way you want. It just happens at any one time. You can only show it one way, but they're distinct like elements in nature. So we were talking about potato chips. So let's go down to food manufacturing. Let's go to snack food manufacturing. Let's go to chips manufacturing. And this just gives you an idea of the granularity. One thing I didn't mention in the video, which is fine, 4 years ago, or maybe it was 5 years ago now, when they had that $500 million thing in New York State for industry clusters, I sent the work that I did to Porter on a Friday, and he asked me on Monday to come up to speak to the two people who run the consulting and the industry strategy institute he has. And at that time, they said they didn't know anyone doing anything like this, which I find shocking because this is pure Porter. I mean, I didn't make this stuff up. So we're a potato chips. So potato chips. Okay, so you can go two ways. 80% of people go this way. Oh, all I want to do is see the competitors. This is all the information that we would have on the industry, but most people just say, oh, I want to go find out who are the top competitors. So in the inner ring of the top, you can do it at the top parent level, or you can say, I want to do it at the brand level. So Campbell Soup has 5 brands that they sell in potato chips. And then if you want to go to the specific offerings, you can hit another button to get more granular. So I don't want to imply that all 24,000 have this much information, but it's a skeleton of what should be there. It really is just doing 101. If you can do 101 for potato chips, who are the top parents? What are the brands? What are the offerings? Or if I want to go back and take the other route and say, okay, it's called potato chips, a one sentence definition. You have your 100 offerings there. You might want to say, what do other industry classification codes call this thing? What the investment people should want to know is how attractive is this industry? How do you decide that? So we score each of the 5 forces, plus there are 3 things that you add to the 5 forces. Now, I would assume investment banks would say, we want to do our own scoring, and we're going to say, fine, we want you to do your own scoring, but this is the like, I would call it an A+ on the structure of what you're supposed to do based on Porter. And as far as the quality of, do we think that the channel power, the supermarkets here is a 101 versus a 105? We don't even want, hey, that's not our business. If you want to be an investment bank and you want to decide, you want to find, but this is the structure you should think about. And when you talk about buyers, you need to talk about channels differently than customer segments. And you need to identify who the decision makers are. And you should come up with, what's the purchase criteria that the channels use? What do we, as a buyer, what do we use? What influences us? And who are the end users? So this is, again, straight out of competitive advantage on what you should do. And you should come up with what are the product service varieties that you have for potato chips. And if you're doing this at the snack food or higher level, none of this makes sense. That's why 99% of people aren't using Porter correctly, because what I saw in Porter that made me do this whole thing was a matrix where he talked about paper towels and paper napkins. They're billion-dollar distinct industries. But every industry classification system except ours wouldn't decouple those 2 things. And you want to know, what are the substitutes? So when you see this stuff, all of a sudden the complicated 5 forces, it's pretty simple, obvious stuff that any consumer would know. And what are the vendors? What do you need to be in this industry? Then we talk about trends. Now, we don't forecast trends. So we make it clear, this isn't a forecast of trends of what will happen. We just want to know what trends are relevant to potato chips. Doesn't matter, later when we talk about economic trend, and that kind of stuff, you want to know, is it good for the economy or bad? You can have high interest rates are good for some industries and bad for most others. But so all it does is say, which trends should you think about? And then there's all the other stuff Porter has that didn't fit neatly there. So for those people that like to do scenario planning, what are the uncertainties? What do you have to necessarily do pretty well for potato chips to basically win? A generic value chain. So companies can be different, but you want to know what are the different things that you need, to do to be in potato chips. And then if anybody cares about social responsibilities, and then we just give a basic forecast of what's the size of the industry. So this one thing for potato chips is the exact same format for the 24,117. So it's really kind of that simple, but the wow factor comes when you say, I want to look at one company quickly. I like Burn Dairy because it's upstate New York. I like talking about them, but most people never heard of them. So you can say, well, you get a quick list, and this is the kind of a more granular way than most people are used to today. But then we quickly go to say, hey, you know what? If you expand all, this is really where you should be looking at it, because cottage cheese, Monterey Jack cheese, and cottage cheese are different. And so this company is in 35 what we call industries, and each one has a different story. We don't care much about a logical hierarchy. It's not their organizational structure, but sometimes it will look like it. It's just logical. Our goal is to go from whatever the top parent company name is to the idea that you can say, okay, how do I get to the offering, the Big Witch vanilla ice cream cookie sandwich? Okay, so that's the key. Okay, so all we care about is going from this to something I could put in an industry. Okay, and then top parents, a lot of people will do this. You can sort it three ways. I like the the Porter way, and this says Dairy Farmers of America competes 21 times head to head with Burn Dairy, and you can work your way down. So the ha-ha moment, before when I said what I did for Manufacturers Hanover Bank, it's the ability to do this, hit compare, and compare two organizations at this granular level. So this, to me, this is where if you're in mergers and acquisition, if you're in PE, if you're any company and you want to say, who should I acquire or something like that, here's where, here's what Burn Dairy does that Turkey Hill doesn't do. Here's what Turkey Hill does that Burn Dairy doesn't do. And then in the middle, it's kind of like talking to you in two ways. It's like, these are the industry groups they share. But if you look more closely, here's where you see by the coloring, Turkey Hill does ice cream cakes and Burn Dairy doesn't.
Okay, so this begs the question about geography. Do you have filters by geography? Because obviously, Burn Dairy is going to be in upstate New York, predominantly enterprise. And if Turkey Hill was in Arkansas, there might not be any synergies there, even if there were opportunities.
So the answer would be, except for the address of the headquarters, we have nothing. It's pure global. So one thing I didn't mention, and it's a total secret, you may intuitively know it and all that, there aren't many people doing this research. So it was a simplifying assumption. I'm not worried about it. I understand that there will be many cases where people will care.
Well, I think that a person doing this analysis would then know that the business is, geocentric, like Chobani. They're going to buy their milk from upstate New York, and that's it. They're not going to truck it in from Ohio because they don't need to.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, hey, Joe, I'm one guy.
No. That's not a critique. I'm just saying that, if I was, if I was, anywhere in the business and I saw, oh, Turkey Hill, I know they're in Arkansas and Burn Dairy's in upstate New York. I know that even if there might be a complementary or supposedly complementary offering, I know I can't use them because of their geography. Then I would go to the next one. You had however many competitors there, and I would just go, down the pecking order as to, which ones might be a good fit geographically, if my industry was geographically sensitive.
Yeah. So the only thing we can do, I don't know if you saw it, but I clicked on the Turkey Hill Dairy.
Yeah.
And all I can get is its headquarters address. That's it. Nothing
Okay.
more than that.
And my assumption in the dairy industry, my assumption would first and foremost say that they're probably going to be located, their footprint's going to be located around Pennsylvania.
Yep.
That would be my assumption, but it would cause me to just investigate a little bit further. But that it still whittles it down from from infinite to less. Like if you showed the competitors of Burn Dairy again.
The competitors of Burn Dairy. So explore organizations, Burn Dairy, top parent competitors.
Okay, so what I would look here is at the top competitors. I would look at basically either bottom up. If I was looking at ones that if I'm looking at the bottom up, those are products or companies that might have either supplemental offerings, tangential offerings to what my core offerings are, or alternatively, they might have some appendix. I'll call them appendix, that are there but are serving no useful purpose, and maybe that person wouldn't mind hiving off their appendix.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. Very
Thanks.
cool.
The only thing I didn't show that I forgot to show is just to say what you can do is you can do a search. So if you do something like battery or something like that, put in a word, okay, so it'll show you, because this is so granular, people will always be surprised at how many times something comes up. So the word battery is used in 81 industries, probably because of energy. And then you got consumer products 39 times.
Yeah.
And then, a car battery, a truck battery, a train battery, you can start to.
Yeah, click in on that for a second.
If you want to do this, I should go to the real search. What do you want me to click in?
I just click. I can do it myself later on, but yeah, just click on autos. Auto manufacturing. That's cool. And then you go to auto manufacturing. And you just keep on drilling down.
Okay, now in the demo, only those places where you see this will there be data. In other words, we're giving data on 20 industries. But if you want me to switch to the real system, then I can go down anywhere here. So instead of saying subscribe.
Did you give me access to the main real system or the demo system?
What I'm showing you is the demo system. And if you go to industrykg.com, it'll give you access to the demo system.
Right. Okay. Thank you for listening to State of Readiness. You can discover more episodes and learn about the book written by Joseph Paris of the same title at www.state-of-readiness.com. You can learn more about Joseph Paris at www.josephparis.me/card.